Good morning to you. I'm Carl Falk. This is the Falkin Around podcast. Hope you're having a good Wednesday morning. We're a little bit later this week. That's okay, though. Hopefully you were able to find us, and if you're enjoying it live, welcome. If you're enjoying it through one of our many rebroadcast mediums, thanks for looking it up. Interesting week this week, week 2 in the NFL. The Bills get a shutout win. We're certainly going to break that down for you, go through the NFL. A lot of other stuff going on. College football. Syracuse gets another win. Are they a good football team? We'll talk about that. Yankees, it is crunch time for the New York Yankees. I'll break down the remaining schedule, and we have some other things to get to as well. Want to start, though, with the NFL Week 2, and the Bills get a win against the Dolphins, and it's not just a win, it's a shutout win, and that's a big deal. In the offensive league that is the National Football League, you don't get many shutout wins. So for the Bills to go down to South Florida and get a 35-zip win over their division rival, the Dolphins, a team that I expect will be there at the end and maybe a wild card team, maybe just outside, this is a big deal. And while some of what I'm going to talk about today isn't flattering for the Bills, the overall process, to steal Sean McDermott's word, is pretty good at this point. You know, they should have finished off the Steelers week 1. They should have gotten that done. They didn't for a myriad of reasons, which we talked about last week, but they come back with the win on the road. They have the Washington football team coming in this week. I was shocked by the spread in that game, 9.5 points. I get it that Tyler Heineke doesn't draw a lot of eyeballs, but I think Washington's a better team than that. But let's talk about what went on down in South Florida, and we'll start with the good. And the good, obviously, was the defense. There were a lot of reasons to be excited about what you saw defensively. The quarterback pressure, the ability to bring pressure, and man, I don't know what Miami's doing down there with adjustments, but when guys are coming free off the edge from the secondary, you might want to make an adjustment to that. It didn't matter whether it was Taron Johnson or Jordan Poyer or Tre'Davious White. The Bills continued to send pressure from the edge, and Miami never picked up on it. That was one thing that I took away. But the other thing was that the Bills have positioned themselves very nicely at the defensive end position. A.J. Epinesa was an absolute beast in this game. 8 quarterback pressures in the game. He was fantastic. He knocked 2 out of the game with a very good hit. Another play, he literally jumped over Jacoby Brissett, didn't make the tackle, got up and got in on the sack that was made by Gregory Rousseau. Rousseau had 2 sacks on the day. He's now the starting defensive end, not Mario Addison. So you look at the Bills, and I don't want to get beyond this game, but just a quick snapshot of the future. Jerry Hughes, last year of his deal. Mario Addison, last year of his deal. Between the two of them, there's roughly $18 million in salary paid out there. Next year, it's very likely you're going to have Epinesa starting at one defensive end, Gregory Rousseau at the other, and their combined salary is going to be about $3 million. It's a really nice thing that Brandon Beane has set up where he's got the depth right now to replace guys who are likely going to go elsewhere and be paid much more money. Smart football team building by Brandon Beane. But Epinesa was an absolute beast, and his best game in his 2 years with the Bills. Rousseau was great, having Star Lotulelei back in the middle. I thought freed up Ed Oliver. We talked a lot about that going into the season. Oliver played a good game. Matt Milano was all over the place. And I mentioned Taron Johnson. This kid continues to get better. He's a player who I always liked, but he couldn't stay healthy, and I know we're only 2 games into the season, so see where it goes from here. Sure tackler. They seem to be using him more than just a slot cover guy. They seem to be moving him around. Good job by Leslie Frazier there. He is evolving into a really, really good football player. So defensively, There was a lot to like. Tre'Davious White was very good. You saw a bounce-back game from Levi Wallace. He had a pick. It was a really nice game all the way around defensively. So that's the really good part. Offensively, there was some good parts too. Early on, the touchdown run by Devin Singletary. What a job on the left side by Feliciano and Deion Dawkins opening that hole for 46 yards, basically untouched. Singletary had a really nice game, 82 yards, had that one touchdown, had a fumble, which is a little concerning, but I like the fact that this game you saw Singletary and Moss each getting their carries. Moss, 8 carries for 26 yards, not stellar by any stretch, but the 2 touchdowns and a couple really physical runs, and that's his job. He's supposed to come in, be the guy between the tackles to give the Bills that physicality, especially on short yardage. Liked what I saw out of him, but again, another fumble. You can't have your backs fumbling the football. Both of them did on Sunday. Takes away from otherwise a good performance. I thought the offensive line was pretty good. There was some quarterback pressure in the passing game, but overall, the run game, they were solid. I thought they did a nice job. I'm concerned about Deion Dawkins and Darrell Williams. I was more concerned going into the season about the interior of the offensive line. But through 2 games, Dawkins and Williams have not been very good. And I think that's going to need to change. And we'll talk about this Sunday how big of a matchup you're going to see there with those 2 guys. So looking at the offensive line overall, I thought they did well. Let's get to what we really have to talk about, and it's Josh Allen. Look, I like Josh Allen, and when he came into the league, I thought this kid's going to be very good. He had 2 years that you looked at and you were like, you saw moments, but you didn't see consistency. You didn't see the next level progression. Then last year happened, and last year was all world. It was as good a quarterback year as you could have ever hoped for from your franchise leader. The Bills rewarded him with a big contract extension. At the time, I said I wouldn't have done it yet. I needed to see more. Look, it's 2 games into the season. I'm not ready to freak out. However, Josh Allen has not played good football the first 2 games of the season. If you're thinking right now, come on, dude, they won 35-0. What are you complaining about? I'm not complaining about the fact that they won 35-0. I'm concerned about the fact that the guy who's going to lead them to the promised land, if they're going to get there, has looked much more like 2019 Josh Allen than 2020 Josh Allen, and that's concerning. Through 2 games, 56% completion percentage, which, again, look at his first 2 years in the league. That's right where he was. He had 449 yards in 2 games. That's 225 yards a game. Now, I get it that in game 2, it's a game that they blew out. They blew out their opponent, and they were running it down the stretch, so you didn't need a ton of passing yards. But it's still, game 1, it was the same thing. The inaccuracy and the uncertainty of where to go with the football, I think, are tied together. Only 3 touchdowns and a 77.9 quarterback rating through the first 2 games. Allen was under pressure against Pittsburgh. I thought he got rattled. I thought he made some decisions that weren't great. I thought that some of the plays that he decided where to go with the football weren't the right decision. Against Miami, it looked different. Against Miami, he looked unsure of where to go with the ball, and he didn't let it rip. There had to be 4 passes that I saw in my rewatch of the game that it looked like he tried to be perfect with the football. Josh Allen's at his best when he's just slinging it. The old Brett Favre term, he's a gunslinger. That's when Josh Allen, I think, plays his best football, when he doesn't have time to think and just lets it rip. Now, he made some really good throws, and he's always going to make those throws, and it's what's going to either make him special or leave us wanting more all the time, because the ability is there. But there was a play in particular that I thought exemplified what I think the problem is right now with Josh Allen. There was a play where they used McKenzie in motion. It was basically a wheel route down the sideline. Now, he had McKenzie open down the sideline early. Didn't take it. Came back to it and tried to loft it in to McKenzie. The ball should have been intercepted. It almost was intercepted. There was another play in the end zone. He was late throwing it to Emmanuel Sanders. Sanders had a step. He tried to loft it in. Again, late with the football, allowing the defender time to get back there. Those are good throws, but poor decisions. There was also a couple throws that just simply weren't that good. They looked like, again, 2019 Josh, not 2020 Josh. What do you do if you're the Bills? Look, again, it's not freak out time, but it's definitely concern time because you're 2 games into the season. Your best player, finger quotes, has not played well yet. You've got to get him going. How do you do that? And I think Sunday is a day for the Bills to put Josh in a situation to get in rhythm early, to come out easy, short, quick passes, go up tempo, create a situation where he, again, is just reacting to the defense and not overthinking it. And allow him to get in rhythm because I think through 2 games, what you haven't seen from him is him being in rhythm. And quarterbacks, when they're in rhythm, are much better than they are when they're not. And he just has to find a way to get there. There was a clip on social media showing a couple different plays. You know, a lot of people question Brian Daboll, the play calling. Man, Josh Allen had 3 receivers wide open. He's in the pocket. He's got to be better pre-snap read. This was a tough matchup because Miami knows the Bills well. They know what they've done in the past. Brian Flores is going to give them different looks. Look, Allen's been great historically against Miami. The Bills have won the last 6 games against Miami. None of them have been all that close. Sunday was the most misleading game that I've seen in a while because while the defense certainly was very good, offensively, I didn't think the Bills were that good. They scored early twice, stalled the rest of the first half, came out, took advantage of Miami's lack of offense to get themselves in a position to get the big game, the big win as it was. So, again, nice win. Happy they won. Not happy the way things have looked. And I'm not all that concerned. It's just something that needs to be stopped. 2 games, no big deal. 3, 4, 5 games into the season, you keep going with the same type of performance, it's time to be very concerned. So certainly keep an eye on it. And I'd love to see, again, this week, come out early, go very much up-tempo, and let Josh Allen get himself in rhythm, get himself into the football game early, and get things going. Now, let's talk about this week's opponent, the Washington football team. They come in to the season expecting Ryan Fitzpatrick to be their quarterback. Didn't happen. Fitz gets hurt early on. Taylor Heineke is the backup. He comes in and actually played well against the Giants last Thursday night. That's the other thing is the Washington football team will have a 10-day preparation window to play the Bills. Heineke played well. He throws the football well, and Terry McLaurin is one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, and nobody pays any attention to this kid. Every year, regardless of the quarterback, he puts up numbers. They've got a nice 1-2 punch at running back with Gibson and McKissick. McKissick had a really good game against the Giants. But for the Washington football team, their success or their failure is going to be predicated on their defensive line. That D-line has 4 first-round draft picks on it. You look at Chase Young, and this kid's just an absolute beast. Reminds me of Bruce Smith, frankly. Just an unbelievable specimen coming off the edge. I think he's going to give Deion Dawkins fits all day long. The Bills need to set up a scheme where somebody's going to help Dawkins, and if not, I think that there's going to be a big problem. Chase Young and Josh Allen are going to get to know each other a little bit better than any Bills fan would want. So that's one part of the defensive line. Jonathan Allen on the inside, kid from Alabama, another first-rounder, obviously. Great interior defensive tackle. He's next to Deron Payne, and it's that one guy, Deron Payne, ties up the blockers. The other guy, Jonathan Allen, makes the plays. Payne is really good at what he does. And then Montez Sweat on the other side, another first rounder and another very good pass rusher. So they haven't got it going yet through the first two games. And frankly, the Giants, with their poor defense or their poor offensive line, were able to contain the Washington football team. So how does this transpire for the Bills? How do they go about it? And I think it's the quick passing game, try to get things going, maybe some misdirection, use the athleticism of the Washington team against them, do things like that. But this is going to be a really tough game, a physical game, and if the Bills cover the 9.5-point spread, I'll be completely shocked. I do not see that coming. It's an important game as you look at the schedule. And I predicted the first 6 games the Bills would be 3-3. They're 1-1 now. Washington this Sunday. Houston at home next week. That should be a win. Tyrod Taylor is out. It's now a rookie quarterback in that one. So you got to think that, especially the way that the defense is playing, they are going to be giving all sorts of trouble to Davis Mills, the backup quarterback, or now the starting quarterback for the Texans. By the way, your quarterback's hurt. Deshaun Watson, one of the better quarterbacks in the league. You're paying this guy a bunch of money. You're still not going to use him? Trade that freaking guy. Do it already. And thankfully, they haven't done what I said last week. They haven't moved him to Washington yet, but we'll see what happens. But then after those 2 games, at Kansas City, at Tennessee, brutal games. Very tough. Both teams 1-1. Great game Sunday night with Kansas City and Baltimore. Then Tennessee comes back on Seattle behind Derrick Henry. So these 2 teams are exactly what you would expect at this point of the year. I still think the Bills are going to be 3-3 after the first 6. That's now the 1/3 poll for the season with the 17 games. Go around the league. I mentioned that the Washington football team beat the Giants. The big play there was the missed field goal. Well, it wasn't a missed field goal because Dexter Lawrence was offsides on that field goal. The Washington team has a field goal attempt to win the game. They run the play. Dexter Lawrence called for offsides. Notice I said called for offsides. And they get a re-kick, and Washington football team gets the win. The thing is, on replay, I'm not so sure that he was offside. He's right next to the center. The ball moves, he moves. Is that offsides? I've saw it 10 times. I can't tell you if he was offsides or not. And in my opinion, and as a guy who refereed for 25 years, if you're not sure, if you don't know, don't blow. And that's, yeah, he moved quick and he got a great jump, but man, I can't say that Dexter Lawrence was offsides on that, but it cost the Giants a victory. Carolina beat the Saints. The Saints come crashing down to earth after their first game, the big win up in Green Bay. Christian McCaffrey back from injury and looks really good. And man, Jet fans, I hate to do this to you, but Sam Darnold looks like a different quarterback in Carolina than he did in New York. The Bears beat the Bengals 20-17. Joe Burrow was picked off 3 straight times. Not good. He's going to be fine, but they better get him an offensive line. The Bears have a very good pass rush and were able to get home on Burrow quite a bit. They got to do better for Joe Burrow. This kid's not going to be the quarterback that he really should be and could be if he's protected. The other thing there, Andy Dalton gets hurt. Justin Fields comes in. Looks like Fields is probably going to be the guy this weekend for the Bears. So funny how that works, where you have the discussion is when does the rookie take over? Sometimes football makes itself play out in a way that you're going to figure out how to make that switch. So interesting there. The Browns beat the Texans 31-21. Good day for the Browns. They run the football well. Baker plays solid. His completion percentage is off the charts through the first couple of games. But the Texans, again, they lose Tyrod, who was playing really well for them, and they go with a young quarterback. I just don't understand. You're paying a guy a whole bunch of money to not play football. It's getting to the point with the injury to Tyrod, there's no reason to not play him. There's no reason to not play Deshaun Watson. Yet, he's not playing. They're not trading him. They're just paying a dude not to play. Very strange situation. Real good game between the Colts and the Rams. Rams end up winning by 3. Matthew Stafford to Cooper Kupp a couple times. Stafford looks really comfortable. Great matchup in this game was in the interior, the offensive line and defensive lines. The Colts, Quentin Nelson, maybe the best offensive lineman in football, going against Aaron Donald, one of the best defensive linemen in the history of the game. And yeah, I do mean that statement. I know it's excessive, but that guy is an absolute beast. Really, really fun game there. Broncos are 2-0. They beat the Jags. Now, look, the Broncos, they've got the great early season schedule. They play the Jets this week, likely to go 3-0 behind Teddy Bridgewater. But their defense is really good. And Vic Fangio is a very good defensive coordinator. So when you're playing a young quarterback, last week Trevor Lawrence, this week Zach Wilson, these guys are going to struggle big time. And you're going against a veteran defense with a great defensive coordinator. Trevor Lawrence was awful last week. 14-33, only 118 yards, touchdown and an interception. Urban Meyer's a guy who hates to lose. They're not even competitive right now. And look, I get it. It's going to be a process. But does Urban Meyer at some point pivot and look at USC and go, you know what? I can go there, have my pick of the litter every year, and win a whole lot of football games again? What's a better situation? I don't think it'll happen that he leaves after 1 year, does a Nick Saban, if you will. But, man, why did Saban leave Miami? 2 reasons. Didn't win, and the perfect job opening came up with Alabama. Isn't that kind of the same thing with Urban Meyer? Not winning. The perfect job opening is USC. It wouldn't shock me. I don't expect it, but it wouldn't shock me. And for Trevor Lawrence, he's going to be fine, but, man, they got to get him some help on the offensive line as well. Speaking of young quarterbacks, Bill Belichick against a young quarterback is an unfair fight. I've seen it over and over and over again. Well, in game 2 of Zach Wilson's young NFL career, and we'll see how long Zach Wilson's the Jets quarterback. He found out how tough it is playing against Bill Belichick. 4 interceptions on the day. This Patriots defense is much better this year than it was last year. Remember, they had all the opt-outs, all the guys who didn't play last year. They went out in free agency. They spent money. They've got a young quarterback of their own, but they've got a very good offensive line and running game. So they're bringing their quarterback along in a much different way than the Jets are bringing Zach Wilson along. It just didn't work out last week for the Jets and Zach Wilson. Really, really well-played defensive game for the Patriots, and this one wasn't even close. And look, New York football, Jets are 0-2, the Giants are 0-2. Not sure where it goes from here, but it's one of those things that with the Yankees right now hanging on, the New York media is not really all focused on the football teams, but it could get ugly soon. So something to keep an eye on that. Throw a little more pressure on those 2 young quarterbacks in New York. Tough game between the Eagles and 49ers. The Eagles are the team I said week 1 surprised me the most because I didn't expect them to be good. Well, they were very good week 1. weren't all that good week 2, but Jalen Hurts was really good again. Did everything he could, but the 49ers get the win. Their defense looking really solid with the return of Bosa. They should be really tough to beat. And it's good to see Jimmy G be efficient. 22 of 30, 189 yards, touchdown, no turnovers. That's winning football for the 49ers this year. I'm not sure that Kyle Shanahan will do that all year, and it's always been my criticism of him. He's a great offensive play caller. However, there are times I don't think he's patient enough to allow his defense to win games. 49ers have a great defense. Let the offense complement the defense. Use your running game, that very good offensive line, Deebo Samuel, and don't turn the ball over. Be conservative offensively when you can be. I think that's the key to success this year. How about the Raiders starting the season 2-0? Raider Nation is going wild. They're printing Super Bowl tickets as we speak. Derek Carr's been really good. Henry Ruggs is back from the milk carton that he was on last year as a rookie. Looked good, making a couple plays. The Raiders are playing good football, and they go into Pittsburgh and get a win in a time slot that traditionally West Coast teams don't come east and win at 1 o'clock on Sundays. But that's not the case. And for the Steelers, as good as week 1 was, week 2 was bad. And it wasn't bad because they played horribly. It was bad because Ben Roethlisberger looked old. Ben Roethlisberger, after the game, had the Ask Matt Canada question about the offense, and you don't like to see that. You know, that's been the drama queen he's always been. He will always be that guy, always say things like that. It's just the way he is. And then you look at what they've got defensively, and TJ Watt gets hurt. TJ Watt going out of that game changed that game because he is a game wrecker. So without him on the field, that's a really big deal. One positive that I want to take out of this for the Steelers was Rochester's own and Aquinas' own. Jameer Jones gets in the game, had a couple tackles, had a quarterback hit. Great to see this young man. His story is fantastic. What he overcame to give himself an opportunity to get on the field and make plays, and now he's out there making plays. Love when our local boys do well. To see Jameer Jones get out there for the black and gold, make impact plays, really, really inspirational. And again, this kid, undrafted out of Notre Dame, didn't have a chance because there was no combine, because of COVID and all the things that went on with that. Last year was a lost year. Again, no, very limited training camps, didn't have a chance there. Gets an opportunity this year and absolutely makes the most of it. Not only makes the 53-man roster now in week 2 being an impact player for the Steelers. So great stuff, Jameer. Keep it making the 585 proud. Arizona and the Vikings had a great game. And Kyler Murray had 400 yards, a couple turnovers to take away from it. Kirk Cousins looked really good. It was one of those good Kirk Cousins weeks. But the more you look at this game, it came down to one thing: kickers. The Minnesota kicker misses a field goal that wins the game if he makes it. You got one job to do. I hate kickers. I really hate kickers. At the same time that the Minnesota kicker's missing his, the Dallas kicker makes one. And they're acting like he's the hero of the game. Kickers have one job to do. And when they don't do it, teams lose games. Horrible loss for Minnesota. Good win for Arizona. Tom Brady, what more do you say about this guy? Seriously. At this point of his life and career, how do you continue with the superlatives? But 5 touchdowns last week? Really? I'm speechless. So because of that, I'm going to switch gears. Did you know Mike Edwards of Tampa had 2 pick six in that game? Think about that. It's rare for a guy to get a pick six. It's even more rare for him to get 2. Oh, and Matt Ryan, this is definitely the end of the ride for Matt Ryan in Atlanta. There was a Josh Rosen sighting. Remember Josh? The other Josh was drafted the same year, Darnold and Baker and Josh Allen, yeah, he got in. That's how bad things are going in Atlanta. Brady had 5 touchdowns. Unreal what he's doing. I mentioned Dallas gets a win. What I didn't mention is their rookie linebacker, and now it looks like rookie defensive end, Micah Parsons, a kid from Penn State. He's only 240 pounds. He played defensive end because DeMarcus Lawrence is out with a foot injury. On the other side, Randy Gregory's out with COVID. And and Micah Parsons gets moved to D-end, position he didn't play in college. He only played it in high school. He has 8 quarterback pressures, was all over the field. Fantastic effort by Parsons in that game. And the Chargers look like the same old Chargers. I know they have a different coach and all these things. And another game they should have won. 2 touchdowns called back by penalty in that game. 2 touchdown throws by Justin Herbert. Herbert's a real deal. He's very, very good. Had a bad interception in this game, but I'll tell you what, that offensive line right now is struggling a little bit. They're going to get this guy killed if they don't get things together up front. He's fantastic, but he needs some help. So, fun game to watch there. The Seattle Tennessee game I mentioned, Derrick Henry, what he did in the second half of this game, 35 carries, 182 yards, 3 touchdowns, just took over the game. One of these days, the wheels are going to fall off Derrick Henry. He had the 2,000-yard season last year. He's a beast, and what I always like about a guy like Henry, big, strong, physical back, late in the season, when everyone's a little dinged, everyone's a little tired, he's even more effective. Here he is in week 2, putting it on Seattle. Seattle got to a lead early in large part because Russell Wilson to Tyler Lockett has become a big-time thing. Anyone who's playing Seattle better be ready for that combination because it is lethal. Baltimore KC, I alluded to this game. Mahomes was great again. Did throw his first pick in September in his career. First loss in September in his career as well. But Lamar Jackson, the more you watch this kid, the more you have to respect what he does and what a gamer he is. You can nitpick all you want. Oh, he's not great from behind. He's not a great thrower of the football. All of the things that he's not great at, I'd prefer to look at it that this guy's an athlete we've not seen the likes of ever in the NFL. He's that good. Throws a pick 6 early to Tyrann Mathieu and comes back and just balls out, and late in the game, put it on his shoulders. He fumbled twice early on. We're showing the flip into the end zone. I guess I'm a little too old school for that. You don't want your quarterback taking unnecessary hits. I guess one-handed cartwheels into the end zone would go along those lines. Dude, just get in there, finish the run, give the ball to the ref, and win the game. You're too valuable to do that. But I did love that the TV cameras caught it too. John Harbaugh yelling out to Lamar, "Lamar, do you want to go for this?" "Yeah, let's go." And they got it done on a 4th down. Ballsy play call, important play call, because the way Mahomes is going, they're going to go down there and win that game. 100% KC wins if they get it back. They don't get it back because Lamar's that special. Really important win for the Ravens. So they get that done there. The Monday night game, I guess everything's all good in Green Bay now. I don't know what Colin Cowherd's been talking about for the last 2 days because he hasn't been able to blast Aaron Rodgers. But Rodgers was great on Monday night. Aaron Jones, who the more I hear about this guy, not the football player, the man, the more I like him. He reached out to a Rochester kid last year, was battling a disease. Kid has since passed, horrific situation. But Aaron Rodgers let the kid design his cleats for a game. Pretty cool stuff there. Aaron Jones let the kid design his cleats for the game. The interviews that he did post-game Monday night, just an impressive young man, and he scores 4 touchdowns. So anytime a running back catches 3 touchdown passes in the game, that's pretty nice too. Rodgers with 4 TD passes, and all of a sudden, all is good in Green Bay. So that's your recap of week 2. Week 3 gets underway tomorrow night, and again, it's going to be a game that a lot of people are going to look at without too much interest, but it's still an NFL football game, so sign me up. I'll be watching. College football. The Syracuse Orange got a big win on Saturday. They beat Albany 62-24. Now, you hang 62 points on a team, you'd think it's pretty impressive, right? Well, let's not forget, Albany is a subdivision game. Albany is a 1AA team. They're not at the same level as Syracuse, nor should they be. But in that game, Sean Tucker was really good. Sean Tucker, through 2 games, has 367 yards and 6 touchdowns on the ground, another one through the air. He's been really good for the first 3 games. There's talk, and if you're watching this podcast, he's number 34 now. There's talk of unretiring the number 44 and giving it to Tucker. Look, they used to use the number 44 as a recruiting tool, and I loved it because when a special player came in and they gave him number 44, you knew that guy was going to be a player that you were going to watch throughout his career. They stopped doing it in basketball. They've stopped doing it in football, and I just don't like the decision. Darryl Gross was the athletic director, made that decision. It gives the fans something to look at. And frankly, the way the programs have been, I think you need to get back to giving the fans something to look at. Syracuse is now 2-1. They beat Ohio, lost to Rutgers, and then they beat Albany. They play Liberty this week. Liberty's 3-0. Liberty's not a bad football team. If Syracuse can get a win and go 3-1 into the ACC portion of their schedule, they have a chance to be a 500 team. That's how unoptimistic I am about this season and in this team. I'm hoping they can be a 500 team. I think it's smoke and mirrors. Dino Babers has been a disappointment, to say the least. Hasn't really recruited well. I'm surprised the offense hasn't been better, but they're starting to run the ball well this year. Maybe that's something they can carry over. I'm not a fan of the 2-quarterback system, but let's face it, Tommy DeVito hasn't been the guy for the first couple of years, hasn't been able to stay healthy. So the fact you're getting the Mississippi State transfer, Garrett Schrader, opportunities now, it may pay off down the road. So something to keep an eye on. I don't think Syracuse is a good football team. I think they're a very poor football team. When you talk about a Power 5 conference team, there aren't a whole lot of Power 5 teams that they're going to go up against and beat. And it's unfortunate because, yet again, the fans of Syracuse football are going to be subject to another long season. Big game Saturday. A lot of Notre Dame fans, obviously, in the area. Notre Dame's playing good football, and Brian Kelly might have his best team yet. Now, Notre Dame's been in the playoffs a couple times under Brian Kelly. This team, I think, may be the best one yet. Saturday at Wisconsin, a game that Wisconsin's got to win. They took that early season loss. They need to get back to the winning ways. A nooner on Saturday. That should be a great game. Notre Dame's going to win that football game. I'm telling you right now, they run the ball extremely well. They're going to win that football game, and that'll be a huge road win. And if they do, the ACC is definitely down this year, and I say that because Florida State is still rebuilding, and Clemson isn't the same Clemson team that we've seen the last couple of years. ND should walk through that portion of their schedule. USC's not having a great year. They've already fired their coach. ND should be a team that is in the playoff again this year. Great job by Brian Kelly at South Bend. If he just stays away from the jokes, because he's not good at the joke thing. Just be a football coach. Don't try to be Jimmy Fallon. You're not. Baseball. The New York Yankees, it is crunch time. Now, they're doing what they're needing to do this week. They're playing the Rangers. The Rangers are one of the worst teams in the league. The Yankees have won the first 2 games. They had lost 2 out of 3 over the weekend against Cleveland. Can't have that at this point of the year. Right now, there are 3 teams vying for 2 wild card spots, and the 3 teams all happen to be in the American League East. The Red Sox lead the wild card situation. They are a game and a half up on Toronto. They have a game tonight against the Mets, so that's a victory because the Mets stink. The Blue Jays are 7.5 back of Tampa, but only a game and a half back of the Red Sox. They've cooled off a little bit, but it was bound to happen. They were playing 990 baseball for a bit, so they've cooled off a little bit, and then the Yankees are a half game behind Toronto. But if you look at the schedules that these teams have, the Yanks have control, in my opinion, of their situation. They have the most control of any situation. So they finish up, the Yankees do, their series with Texas tonight. Got to get that win. They then play 3 games at Boston. They play 3 at Toronto and finish with 3 at Tampa. And at that time, Tampa's just going to be setting their pitching up. They're not going to be playing the type of ball that you would expect in a final week of the season because they'll have everything sewn up. You look at what's going on with the Yanks last weekend, and here's the one bugaboo. We showed Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole's a $340 million player. He's been really good this year. Cy Young Award candidate. He shouldn't win it, in my opinion, based on Sunday's performance when he got shelled in what was essentially a must-win game against the Tribe. You can't be a Cy Young winner, and when your team needs you the most, go out and get lit up in 5 innings. Sorry. Can't be. Can't have it. You got to be better than that. Garrett Cole needs to be strong down the stretch. Now, I mentioned the Yanks have 6 against the Jays and the Sox. They go 4-2 in those 2 games. They should get in. However, the Jays, who finish up in Tampa tonight, have 4 against the Twins in Minnesota. The Twins aren't a good baseball team. The Yankee game, and then they finish with 3 against the Orioles, who are the worst team in the league. Very advantageous that they play them. The Sox, I mentioned that they have a pretty easy road. Now, they're the team in the lead now. You finish up the series with the Mets tonight. Day off, 3 against the Yanks, and their last 6, though on the road, at Baltimore and at the Nationals. The Nationals are a terrible team as well. They traded all their good players except Juan Soto. And if you just walk Juan Soto every time up, literally, you should beat the Nationals. That's how bad the rest of that lineup is. So really, really important for the Yankees to handle their business against the Blue Jays, against the Red Sox. Got to win both of those series. If you don't win both of those series, you think of where this franchise will go from here. You've got a new general manager possibly. You'll likely have a new manager. You go out and you get rid of some of the players. I don't know what players you keep and what players you move on from, but the franchise is altered if they don't make the playoffs. So next week, the Boston series this weekend and the Toronto series early next week. Huge, huge baseball games for the New York Yankees, and we'll see where it goes from here. But that is really, really important. And frankly, it's fun stuff to look at because those are great matchups. And, while we've become football-centric, this is when baseball is great. So something definitely to keep an eye on going forward. This weekend is one of my favorite sporting events that comes every 2 years. Last year, because of the pandemic, it didn't happen, so it was postponed to this year. And, of course, I'm talking about the Ryder Cup. The Ryder Cup was here in Rochester in 1995, and it was a couple things happened then. One, the Euros beat the Americans on U.S. soil, and it kind of changed the way the Ryder Cup was going to be. That was the biggest sporting event, in my opinion, in the history of Rochester sports. To have the world focused, and it was the world. It wasn't just the golf community. It was the world focused on our town. It was amazing. I heard a press conference yesterday with Sergio Garcia, who talked about the impact that the 1995 Ryder Cup here in Rochester had on him. He ended up going to the Ryder Cup as a 15-year-old kid. Went there, is a Spaniard, so he got to meet Seve Ballesteros. Ballesteros kind of took him under his wing a little bit, showed him around. But he talked about going to the villages where they had the different hospitality tents and the international tent. And I remember this because I remember going to the Ryder Cup, and the international tent was just different. I remember going there on a Friday morning when the matches were going to start at 8 a.m., and dudes were in the international tent just singing their songs and smoking cigars, and believe me, the scotch was pouring. They were having a good old time, and it was just unhinged. And Sergio talked about seeing that as a young boy and how much of an effect it had on him and where things were going to go for him. So it was really, really pretty wild to hear him talk about the effect that the 95 Ryder Cup had on him as a young man. Well, now, here we are, 2021, Whistling Straits in Wisconsin. The U.S. not been good in the Ryder Cup over the last couple of years. The Europeans, again, a team that's very unified. Well, it's time to hate Sergio Garcia again because he's going to be money, and Ian Poulter's going to be draining putts again. That's what this event is about. For the U.S., this is the first time in a long time. No Tiger Woods, no Phil Mickelson. It's a different young team. You've got guys like Xander Schauffele and Bryson DeChambeau and Brooks Koepka. So you've got the Brooks-Bryson thing, although they're teammates. Do you match them up by chance to try and get something going? I don't know that you can do that because you want compatibility, and you certainly don't have that. The best player, I think, for the U.S. team is Justin Thomas. Justin Thomas, in his 18 Ryder Cup matches, has lost only 3 times. He's had 12 wins, he's had 3 ties, but he's only had 3 losses. Really, really good stuff. And if you look at a guy like Tiger Woods, possibly the greatest golfer we've ever seen, his record in the Ryder Cup isn't close to what Justin Thomas is. Patrick Reed, another guy who was Captain America, we'll never forget. A couple of years ago, I think it was in Minnesota at Hazeltine, when he and Rory McIlroy were going back and forth and the crowd's just going nuts. What makes this special to me is the nationalism, which is fantastic, but also the fact that, you know, you might not like Bryson DeChambeau or Brooks Koepka, but if you're an American and you're a golf fan, you're going to be rooting for them this week, because this is when it just turns to a different thing. The Ryder Cup is fantastic. It is just a ton of emotion. Starts Friday morning, all day Friday, all day Saturday, and then noon Sunday. The singles matches go up against football, and not many things will make me turn away from a football game. But on Sunday afternoon, I certainly will be keeping an eye on the Ryder Cup. It should be a lot of fun to watch. And Whistling Straits, I think, will be a great venue. It's just a picturesque venue. It's right on the shore, literally right on the shore of Lake Michigan in Wisconsin. There are some drivable par 4s that are going to lend itself to this format. Should be a lot of fun to watch this weekend. NBA training camps are getting going next week, and there's a big story out of Philadelphia. Ben Simmons doesn't want to report. Remember, last we saw Ben Simmons, he was refusing to shoot a layup because he was afraid he wouldn't make it in the playoffs. Philly has let this thing fester. They've gotten to this point of the offseason, and they haven't done anything about it. And for them to not have done anything about one of the best young players a couple years ago in the league, and right now he's still very talented. The team's got to figure out how to use him, and he's not the focal point. He's got to be a contributing player, not the main guy. Philly mishandled this thing, in my opinion. Ben Simmons is an immature child. If you remember, if you happen to have seen the Showtime documentary about Ben Simmons and what he's like as a person, he's just not going to be a strong-willed guy who's going to lead a franchise. But you surround him with the right players, he becomes then a role player, he can help your team win. Philly has mishandled this all the way around, in my opinion. Ben Simmons mishandled it in his side as well. Philly should have traded him after the season and moved on from him and built around Joel Embiid, who's the far better player. I don't know why this is not resolved at this point of the season. I should say of the off season when you're going into camp. And while I say that, I got to bring this up again because the hockey camps are opening soon. And did you know Jack Eichel's still a Sabre? Did you know that? The odds of Jack Eichel, what'll happen first? Jack Eichel puts on the Sabre sweater one more time and goes out there for a skate, or Deshaun Watson starts at quarterback for the Texans? Now, believe me, their situations are completely opposite. They have nothing to do with each other. But it's a team with a disgruntled superstar who's not going to play for them, doesn't want to play for them, has no interest in being anywhere near them, is an absolute cancer because of that in the clubhouse, and yet he's still a member of your team. Again, management mishandling a situation. They had an asset, they haven't done anything with it, and now it's festering. And it's just, I see no end in sight for the Jack Eichel saga. Oh, one other thing about the Sabres. Rasmus Dahlin still doesn't have a contract. Now, he's a restricted free agent. He can't go anywhere. But did you plan on getting that done prior to camp's beginning? I just, you've got a former number 1 overall pick who rebounded last year and had a pretty good second half of the season. You might want to build around somebody, and maybe it's Rasmus Dahlin. It's just amazing that this Sabre organization completely mishandles every situation that presents itself. It's befuddling to me. It really is. Lastly, I got to talk about one of my least favorite athletes, Conor McGregor. Can't stand Conor McGregor. I don't know what the appeal for a cocky, arrogant dick who sucks at his job is. Conor McGregor was built up by Dana White to be this wonderful fighter. He's not been. Every big fight he's been in, he's got his ass kicked. Yet, he continues to be somebody that the masses love. Maybe they like his whiskey. I'm not sure what it is with him. But yesterday, Conor McGregor threw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field. Why? I don't know. The Cubs are in a bad season. Maybe they were just looking to spark something up and get somebody to mention that they was there. I have no respect for any athlete who can't throw a baseball 50 feet to home plate. Look, my shoulder's shot. I still won't bounce it. I promise you. Give me 3 warm-up throws. I'm not going to bounce it. I'm not going to throw it 90, but I'm not going to bounce it. Conor McGregor made 50 cents pitch. Look at that thing. Like, to say just a bit outside, look at the Cub mascot. And he's laughing about it. That's embarrassing. Did you not practice? Have you never thrown? I know he grew up in Ireland, right? You never threw a rock? I'm not saying you didn't grow up throwing baseballs. You never picked up a rock as a kid and threw it? That's unbelievable. I don't understand the fascination with Conor McGregor, and I don't understand how a so-called athlete can't throw a baseball 50 feet and at least make it look reasonable. Again, lob it. Put a bunch of air under it. Just get it there. Don't embarrass yourself. Then again, Conor McGregor's claim to fame, he's embarrassed himself in every big situation. I mentioned he hasn't won a big fight, I don't think, ever. That's the show for this week. Thanks for listening. Be back next week. Appreciate it. I'm Carl Falk. This is the Falkin Around podcast.